Hello everyone, this is Paukshte Fashion Workshop. I remind you that we post new videos every day. I also want to remind you that some of our video courses are already available. Buy them if you haven't done it yet. We would really appreciate your support. Today we'd like to show you how to edge sleeves with the cuffs decorated with buttons and buttonholes. We've already cut the sleeve. This is just a mock-up. Do not forget that you will have to use two sleeves. The cuffs are going to be pretty narrow. When finished, it will be 2 cm wide. We cut the detail 5 cm wide and a piece of the interfacing material of the same size to double it. Be very attentive. The interfacing material should be cut on the lengthwise grain to prevent the cuff from stretching. We've also made the bias binding for edging the slits. The slits will be made in the center of the sleeve. First, we need to mark the center sleeve. We need to do it in order to be able to draw the slits. They are going to be 7 cm long. You can make them as long as you want. Cut the slits according to the drawn lines. The width of the bias binding for edging the slits is 2.5 cm, and for the loop, 2 cm. These details were cut on the bias. First, we are going to edge the slits. Attach the binding to the opening this way. The details should be joined face to face. We are going to stitch them from the wrong side. Do not forget to make back stitches in the beginning and the end of the seams. The width of the seam is 5 mm. Be very attentive. When you reach the corner, make the seam just 1 or 2 mm wide. On the other side, the seam should be 5 mm wide as well. Do not forget to make the back stitch in the end of the seam as well. This is how the seam looks like now. The width of the seam is 5 mm. This is the wrong side of the sleeve. Notice that the seam is 5 mm wide at the edges, but it's just 1 or 2 mm wide at the corner. This is how the slits should be stitched. This is very important. Let's make the bias binding for the second detail right away. This one is 2 cm wide. Fold it in half. This detail should be round. This is why it should be stitched differently. We'll make the seam 5 mm wide at the beginning, and then we'll make it tighter, about 2 or 3 mm wide. If the fabric you're working with is thin, make the seam more thin as well. Have a close look at the way Nataly is working. The width of the seam should be 2 or 3 mm wide. Make tiny stitches. Have a close look here. There's kind of a funnel here. The stitches are tiny. The width of the seam is just 2 or 3 mm. Next, we need to cut the extra pieces from the detail, and then turn it right side out. Cut the extra pieces from the seam allowance as well. Don't cut too much, this is very important. Save some fabric to fill the tube. Nataly is going to show you the most simple way for turning this detail right side out. First, we need to thread a needle. Notice that this is a needle for the sewing machines. Thread it with the threads which were used for stitching. Make a knot here. Put the needle into the hole and pull it to the other end. Be very attentive, please. This is why we made the seam a bit wider in the beginning. For us to be able to do that without any problems. This is a time-consuming process. Be patient. When you turn the detail right side out, go to the ironing desk. This detail should be stretched. Not much, just a bit. It should be accurate, and its sides should be even. We also need to iron the bias binding stitch to the slit. Be very careful when ironing the detail. This is the right side. Next, we need to fold the binding. And iron it this way. Make sure that you don't make any folds or waves. Next, we need to double the cuffs with the interfacing material. The direction of the lengthwise grain in the main fabric should match the direction of the lengthwise grain in the interfacing material. The detail shouldn't stretch after being doubled. Let's fold one of the edges and press it. The width of the folded edge is 5 mm. There will be a 5 mm wide seam on the other side. The cuff is going to be 2 cm wide. Next, we need to fold the cuff in half and press it once again. Leave one of the edges open. Very nice. Let's go back to the sewing machine. Before we move on to working with these details, we need to finish edging the slit. First, we need to cut the extra pieces from the binding. Next, Nataly is going to tack it. We'll show you how to do it. Fold the bias binding in such way that it covers the edge, and then take it.
Мы заметываем так, чтобы дать потом строчку на 0,1 по краю бейки.
We're taking the detail in such way that we will be able to stitch it with 1 mm wide seam. You can stitch in the ditch if you want to.
этого и нужно было
This is why we iron the binding. It's much more convenient to work with it this way.
вот как
This is how the tacked bias binding looks like. Let's go back to the sewing machine.
перестраиваем
We're going to make regular stitches.
стежок. С лицевой
Stitch the details from the right side.
побей.
The width of the seam is 1 mm.
Если вы хорошо заметали,
If you tack the bias binding accurately, the seam should be done neatly both on the face and the wrong side.
с изнаночной стороны,
Have a close look here.
чтобы и с лицевой стороны
This is how the seam should look like. It's absolutely perfect.
была строчка.
It's accurate both on the wrong and the right sides.
Заметку.
Next, we need to remove the tacking.
Сейчас
Let's go back to the ironing desk.
отутюжим
The stitch details should be ironed.
работу. Будьте внимательны, как они утюжатся. Они
Watch what Nataly is doing very attentively.
одна
This is how the binding should be ironed.
срезаем лишнее.
Cut the extra pieces.
Делать вот здесь маленькую.
The only thing we need to do is to fix this point.
Идем за швейную машинку, продолжаем работать.
To do that, we need to go back to the sewing machine.
Обратите
We need to make just a couple of stitches here. Notice that Nataly is making the stitches on the bias.
Сделали
That's it.
немножко наискосок.
We fixed the corner.
Начать шов рукава.
Next, we need to stitch the underarm seam.
В нашем случае,
When it's done, we'll move on to working with the cuffs.
поэтому
I remind you that this is just a mock-up.
и мы не будем делать оверлок.
This is why we're making just one sleeve. We're also not going to edge it with an overlocker. The width of the seam is 1 centimeter. That's all for today. Next time, we'll continue working with these sleeves.
В начале и в конце,
We'll show you how to stitch the cuffs and how to edge them.
по идее, нужно
Be different and beautiful. We're Ira and Nataly. Subscribe to this channel.
мы отутюжим
Thank you. Goodbye.